2018 is the end of the f***ing world. Maybe. Hey guys, so The End of the F***ing World actually debuted late 2017 in the UK on Channel 4, but is actually now debuted internationally on Netflix. The full first season, 8 episodes, is now on Netflix and streaming, so if you want to go check it out, please do. The series stars Alex Lothar and Jessica Barden, and it's considered a dark comedy sort of drama. It's actually based on a graphic novel of the same name by Charles S. Forsman. Now, the premise of the entire story is that this boy named James, who believes he's a psychopath or some sort of sociopath, befriends this girl named Alissa. Now, they sort of go on this adventure with each other and build this relationship. What they think is more of a romantic relationship, and James has some ulterior motives, but they sort of develop and grow to really love each other despite their differences. And then they get into a whole mess of trouble, and they have to sort of get away and do their best to run away, but there's a lot of overcoming circumstances that they're going to have to try and fight and get through, and they unfortunately have to do it together. Probably the best way that I can describe The End of the F***ing World has to be, it's a combination of several different stories and story elements that we've seen in the past, but the way they present it is very fresh and new. So in the beginning, it very much reminded me of Dexter, with James's sort of darkness that he feels and the way he sort of speaks and that sort of lack of communication or connection with the world as a whole. I felt that very much in the beginning. And then as he meets Alissa and they sort of start having their relationship and things start going very wrong, it very much turns into sort of a Bonnie and Clyde natural-born killers type of story, which I thought was an interesting direction to go. But again, the way that it's presented felt very fresh and new and very captivating that I just couldn't tear my eyes away from, and I just plowed through the entire series. Now, obviously, I don't want to give away any spoilers as to what happens or why all these events are happening or what they're running away from, things like that, because I actually want you to see the series because it's definitely worth watching. But I have to say that, again, the way it's presented is so unique and refreshing that it feels new. They're very similar themes that we've seen in the past and felt in the past, but it feels very new. And because I think that it presents these hectic situations, these stressful situations, and the way the characters handle them in sort of an adult way, but also with a very childish sort of mindset and what they're doing. I don't really know how to best describe it. There's a lot of mixed emotions and things you can sort of describe this series as. But you can really tell that the title really fits the theme of the show, which is the end of the fucking world. Not because the world is ending by any way, but it feels like the end of these kids' lives are ending. Like every event that they go through is one step closer to them sort of ending their freedom, essentially. Not necessarily the world, but their personal world. They're losing their freedoms and like that child innocence, and now they're really growing into becoming adults and having to make all these hard choices, a lot more traumatic and dramatic than your average choices, but still, nonetheless, it feels like this adventure is very hectic and stressful, and these kids are going through quite a lot. I really felt like the lives of these characters are forever changed by one event, and then it just continues to snowball into event after event that really is going to change their lives forever, not necessarily for the best. Yes, they do have some positivity coming out of it, being that they have each other, but every single event and choice that they make tends to be the wrong one, even though they have opportunities to get out of certain situations. So, again, I don't want to give anything away, but I felt like these characters sort of stepped into quicksand, is the best way that I can describe this series. The characters are, once they come together, they start going out and having their sort of own adventures. They step into the quicksand and they start to sink a little bit, and then they panic, and then they continue to sink lower and lower, and events keep happening, and they keep sinking lower until they can no longer get out of it. And I think that's the best way to describe this show, is like quicksand for these characters. Now, as for the acting of the show, I actually think it's actually really well done. Alex Lothar, who was in The Imitation Game, as well as he was in the episode of Shut Up and Dance from Black Mirror, does a phenomenal job as James. He does a really great job of carrying this darkness inside of him, But when Alissa comes along, it really shakes up his entire world, his entire perspective, and he starts to realize maybe he's not the person that he thinks he is. And the way it's portrayed is just absolutely great. He goes through a real emotional arc. You don't necessarily see it physically necessarily, but he goes through quite a big emotional arc, and you find out some things about his character's past as well as where he's going in the future that you really feel for this kid, and you really hope for the best, even though it doesn't look like it's going to be the best situation for him. As for the other actress, she did a great job as well. Jessica Barden, who was also in The Actress, and Hannah. She does a great job as Alissa. A little bit hectic and a bit crazy at times, but I think that's just the character. And I don't think that's anything against the actress. I think she did a phenomenal job. But I really liked sort of the times when they would portray her sort of having this demeanor outside, and then they would sort of play over the top of it like her internal thoughts. Where she would be maybe calm about it and be like, okay, let's handle this. But on the inside, she'd be like, shit, shit, shit. It was absolutely one of the greatest things I think that this show really added was that internal monologue at the same time that certain actions were happening. Again, she was definitely very hectic, and there were times where she frustrated me, but she brings a much needed balance to James's character, which is very stoic and not very emotional or expressive. And she is that a little bit more emotional, expressive, outlandish, I guess expressive is the best way to put it, character. And I think that they really balance each other, and that's what brings them so well in together and makes them such a great couple, I guess is the best way to put it, great team for this series. Now, as for negatives for the end of the fucking world, I don't think I have any. I mean, there's really not a whole lot for me to nitpick. If I was really, really focusing on nitpicking for this season or for this series, I think the biggest problem I had overall, even though there were frustrating moments, it was more for character purposes or story purposes. I feel like the thing that frustrated me the most was the ending, but I think that's really nitpicking because they're really leaving it open for a season 2 and what may be potentially happening or what could possibly go a certain direction. I don't really know how to describe it, but I think that was the most frustrating thing is the way that it ended. But they got to leave you hanging for a season 2, and they got me, and they definitely want me to cannot wait to see season 2. Hopefully it'll come out soon, and I can binge watch that as soon as possible. Overall, I think The End of the Fucking World was a phenomenal series. It had great acting. A lot of the visuals were very beautiful. There's a lot of great story elements. Like I said previously, a lot of elements that we've seen before, but presented in a sort of fresh way and interesting way for at least the modern world. And I think that character development mixed with the story elements really worked very well together, very hand in hand. And for that reason, the overall grade that I'm going to have to give The End of the Fucking World is an A+. So guys, those are my thoughts on The End of the Fucking World. Be sure you check it out. It's now streaming on Netflix. Again, it's only about 8 episodes, about 30 minutes apiece, and definitely worth checking out. It's a really great adventure for these kids. Although it's traumatic for them, it's actually really great to watch and a lot of fun at times. So I highly recommend checking it out. But be sure you let me know if you have seen it, your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. But other than that, that's all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.